in one sense, China looks at the American presence as interference in the Asian affairs. In the South China Sea conflict, for example, China says, whatever problems we have with our neighbors, are our problems. Why should the United States get involved and try to tell us what to do or how to solve our problems? So please stay away. If you want to have good relations with us, you can, but please do not try to appear to be backing some of the countries in the region against China. How do you tell the Chinese what your role actually is in this?
Well, we're very clear with Chinese friends what our role is, and I would just simply underscore this. By some measures, 50% of the global tonnage of trade transported by sea travels through the South China Sea every year. By measurements of value, somewhere between a quarter and a third of global commerce travels through the South China Sea. Let me just assure you, that is not simply a Chinese interest. It is an interest of all countries globally to maintain a peace and stability, a freedom of navigation through the South China Sea. And we've made that very clear for decades. That is a profound interest of the United States. It is also the case, if you look carefully at every official statement that the United States has made, we have never singled out any country. We talk about principles, about goals, and about objectives. And I will also tell you that if you look carefully at what Secretary Clinton called for in Bali at the ASEAN Regional Forum in July, it was for claimant countries to specify specifically their interests and the basis on which they have made particular claims. It is more than one country that has come to us after that and said we have problems with this. Because it turns out that there are more than one country that has expansive claims. So our primary interest is in dialogue, is in diplomacy, and is in freedom of navigation and open commerce. These are values that everyone in ASEAN aspires to.
So the role of the United States is to try to be the middleman, the broker between China and ASEAN countries that have problems with China?
We've rejected that role very clearly. So we do not believe that we should play a role as a facilitator or as a go-between. What we want is to help create a context for appropriate interactions. Peaceful, non-coercive, diplomatic, based on the principles laid out, for instance, in the law of the sea, about how to make determinations on issues associated with sovereignty.
The other conflict you have is on the currency issue. There's legislation in, I think they passed the Senate and it's going to the House. You think that will eventually be passed? The law that talks about currency manipulation?
Well, first of all, I think the process in the House is likely to be lengthy. And several leaders in the House, the lower chamber in our government, have expressed some concerns about this legislation.
So you don't think it will be passed?
I don't know if it will be passed or not, but I do know that some of the leaders have expressed doubts about whether it's appropriate, concerns about whether it will lead to much greater trade frictions. And of course, the Obama administration, we stated very clearly that it raises some WTO compliance, WTO legality issues. And so obviously there are the overall goals of the legislation we agree with. But I think further study is needed, and there is a complex process of diplomacy that's underway between the executive and legislative branches in the United States, and also with Chinese interlocutors. Clearly, some progress has been made on macroeconomic policy, but I think it is the view of the architects of this legislation that it's not enough, and many would agree with that in the United States.
And President Obama's position is?
Well, the position that he has underscored is that the administration shares many of the goals of this legislation, but it requires further study, and that there are some concerns that it may not be compliant with the WTO.